think it's kind of cool that you started. I was wondering if somebody would mention the Wheel of Time series.
There's a lot of characters I like. It was really hard to pick one.
Well, I had a mixture. It's like I didn't want to do all fantasy books or sci-fi books or anything, so it's a mixture of classic books and characters that I like with nerd stuff. So, all right, Brendan, who's your number 10?
Well, I'm going to start off with the author who has outsold everybody but William Shakespeare in the Bible. So we're going to start off with Agatha Christie, and I'm going to go with Miss Marple.
All right. So
yeah, because the Miss Marple books were some of the first more adult style books I read. Actually, Miss Marple and Lord of the Rings books were really the first kind of books that were not written for the primary school level, that they were written more for teenagers and above, or adults, and those are the first ones I read when I was 5th, 6th, 7th grade. So those were the first really adult style books that I read, and I still read them today. So
it's interesting.
Good memory.
I almost put that in there. I had kind of a debate between that and Nancy Drew, of who I favored more, but she would actually be like in my top 15 or top 20 if we expanded that list. But as I said, there's so many great characters, and if you're dealing with classic books compared to newer books that are more nerdy or sci-fi and fantasy, it's hard to fit everything. So I did one that I still love to read today, and I got reminded of it because I have multiple paperback copies, and I found one in a bathroom drawer. I guess I had reread it at some point in my bathroom. The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. So
anyway, go on.
Mr. Ponyboy Curtis is my number 10.
Okay.
Yeah. So the reason it's easy to look at different characters from that book to put them in. Every one of them adds something to a point. You can easily put Johnny in there because Johnny's the tragic one who dies and everything, but the book really does center on Ponyboy because he has all of these influences that help shape who he is. Okay, from his brothers to being on the run with Johnny to Dally and everybody like that, and he is one that I feel like is older than what he is. He doesn't really get a chance to be a kid. He's sensitive, but he's dealing with all of these sides pulling him in different directions. And then you deal with, your friend having to defend himself and kill a rich kid, which of course, they're going to take that they won't believe him because he's poor and stuff like that. And the book is just absolutely incredible. It's not even that huge of a book, but the narrative is, I guess what I'm just trying to say is, if you look at that story of being a kid caught either on the wrong side of the tracks or being misunderstood because you don't have money, or you're too smart for your own good and all that, of course you kind of get ostracized by society and everybody else. And your true struggle is about finding what your identity is. And here you are as dealing with a sensitive kid who loves books, just wants to live life and all that, and is kind of in love with a girl that he can never have. So, and the movie's actually, the movie version directed by Francis Ford Coppola is actually really good as well.
Stars.
Yeah. So, but anyway, Ponyboy Curtis is my number 10, and I always love it when I can make that reference, "Stay Golden, Ponyboy," and people will actually understand it. And they're usually people in their 30s or 40s. So that's my number 10. All right. Chloe, who is your number 9?
This is sad. Like Johnny Cade is my number 9. That's why I'm like, oh, I'm freaking out now because we're gonna just be talking about outsiders, I guess, back to back.
Well, again, I went back and forth on that, but I feel like it's more about from Ponyboy's narrative, and Johnny he's kind of almost like his, it's like his conscience.
Right.
more or less. So
I ultimately picked Johnny because he's what like a lot of like girls or people online would call the cinnamon roll character. You ever heard that term? Oh, like, oh, the cinnamon roll, yeah, he's so sweet and and he is, but he's an effective cinnamon roll. He, like he's a beat up puppy, but he like because of that, like he defends himself and he wants to save his friends and eventually dies saving those children, in the fire.
right.
Um, and
Well,
I
I
don't
think
know, and I don't know, everything about him, and then his letter at the end just made me cry so hard every single time I hear anything about it. So I ultimately had to put him.
they're both great characters. I think you can interchange them in a top 10 list easily. But to your point about kind of like a lost puppy or a beat up puppy, I mean, he was always a tragic character. Right? He's a character that was always going to influence more or be better after he was dead because of the inspiration that he would give to people. But that immediately that character is going to have a tragic life no matter what.
Yeah, I wanted to add at least like one pure kind of like character because there's like so many good ones in books that are just
Right.
tragically pure, and I think he's like one of my favorite ones for sure.
And for you millennials out there that are starting to discover the Karate Kid, before Ralph Macchio was Daniel LaRusso, he was Johnny in The Outsiders.
That's right.
That's right. And what's kind of funny is at the time of that movie, Ralph Macchio was a little bit more famous than Tom Cruise, who was also in that movie.
Yeah, Tom Cruise really hadn't, really hit his stride yet. So
Yeah.
That before after Legend was made.
No, it was before.
Yeah, it was before Legend. Yeah, and it was after The Right Stuff, though. I think.
No, Risky Business. I think The Outsiders came out right before Risky Business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Risky Business put him on the map, but it was one of those movies that he did before everybody really knew who he was. So
yeah.
And Legend came out in '85, right before Top Gun. And the reason we know that is our good friend Doc, who passed away a few years ago, was actually stationed at Miramar during the filming of Top Gun and would like to tell stories about when the actors came on set. He was one of the Navy technical guys who, in an extra in the film. But he loved to tell the story about everybody who thinks Tom Cruise looked good in Top Gun, you should see him when he first arrived on set with long hair. So anyway, all right, Brendan, who is your number 9?
I'm gonna go with character from Victor Hugo and Les Miserables. We're gonna go with Jean Valjean.
Right.
Sorry.
Let me guess.
That's gonna be up on my list too.
Yeah, well, it's a great story. I mean, it's been turned into movies and television shows, and a 30-year run of a Broadway show. So it's not surprising that more than one of us have it as a list, but I mean, it's a very interesting character arc of redemption and struggling against just not just survival, but to thrive, and especially in tumultuous times, which that's not relevant at all right now. So it's a great story, and he's a great character, and just trying to be a better man and do the right thing regardless of how difficult it may be. So
yeah. And I'm just going to say it, Liam Neeson plays a better Jean Valjean. There's been a lot of different good versions of him, but I only kind of say that to Brendan, who is not a fan favorite of the Liam Neeson version of the movie compared to the musical.
I'm not a fan of that version, and I love the musical version.
Well, I think the best version of Jean Valjean was from the original Broadway cast, but
yeah.
who I'm looking up the gentleman's name right now.
Oh, I know. I usually know his name, but I'm very sleepy right now.
Let me,
Literally fail at Broadway trivia right about now.
yeah.
How did I not know his name? He's so good.
So,
Original Broadway production. Here we go. Colin Wilkinson.
Tom Wilkinson.
there you go.
And then he played or he was in the movie at least too.
Also, if you are interested in the latest, movie / musical version, it is on Netflix right now with Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway. So I remember doing a screening of that, and everybody's kind of in tears because they did such a fantastic job of adapting the music and into a movie and making that version. So
yeah, we'll not talk about the other musical that the director went on to do.
Fair enough. So, number 9 on my list, another great character from a classic novel. I have Atticus Finch.
I almost added him, but I figured one of you guys would.
Yeah, I feel like. So, here's the way I look at Atticus Finch. If you read the sequel that Harper Lee kind of wrote to Kill a Mockingbird, but it got published like 50 years later,
It's just
where it has this different version of Atticus Finch, where he really isn't that heroic. He is a bit of a racist, and just kind of existing in that world. It's fine if you're upset about that, and I get it. It may be a little bit more a realistic version, but the Atticus Finch that we come to know from To Kill a Mockingbird, you have to understand, it's not. He is a man with faults. Don't get me, and I'm not saying he isn't. I read both of those books. I love To Kill a Mockingbird, but To Kill a Mockingbird is not from his point of view. It's from the point of view of Scout, in the world that she grew up in, and that's how she sees her father, and all the things that he does, and all that. And I attribute Atticus Finch as a guy who does try to do the right thing. He may not be perfect. He may be a little bit on the racist side or whatever, but he is still an honorable man. He still defends a man who, he knows even if he points to all the facts, they're going to convict him anyway because he's black, and they're going to take the word over a white girl over him any day. Loves his children, does anything that he can for them, doesn't want to shoot guns or whatever, but does what he has to protect his family. And on top of that, Gregory, I don't think there's anybody better than Gregory Peck that could have portrayed him in a movie. I think he's the father figure that we all wish, we could have, unless, you already have an Atticus Finch for a father, and you see those same qualities. But I think he's kind of the perfect father figure within a story. And I'm always amazed about the people that have never read To Kill a Mockingbird. I've dated a couple of girls that just never read it in school, and I'm like,
Isn't
how
it
did you
reading most of the time?
Yeah, it's kind of required reading for a reason. And
I think I had to read it my junior year, actually.
Yeah.
Well, no, I read it. Had to read in middle school.
It's one of those books I kind of keep extra copies of, because if I hear someone, I've never read this book. What? Go read it now. And it's not even that long. So,
Listen to the book.
Maybe it was earlier than that, Chloe. I don't know. Been a long time.
So I almost put Holden Caulfield kind of in that slot as the, ultimate teenage rebel who has this great voice and speaks truth when other people can't. But I was like, no, I got to go with Atticus Finch on there, because you get one character that you see that's this rebel that speaks his mind and says the things that we all wish we could say. But I think Atticus Finch is that person that we wish we could all be. It's the pendulum of morality and trying to do the right thing and defend the defenseless. So anyway, that's my number 9. Number 8. Chloe, who is your number 8?
Sweet. Well, I was debating putting her here because right now in the political climate, this book is becoming controversial. But Scarlett O'Hara from Gone with the Wind. Um, I, unless I'm interpreting it very wrong, it's really not an advocate for, the glory days of the South or slavery. It's really more about forcing change upon a society that, was kind of in a la land. And Scarlett, I really like her, even though she's a terrible character, um, because it's really wasn't usual for at the times, especially like in the 1930s, to write a main girl as kind of a really terrible bitch. And Scarlett is. But she's not like a villain or anything. She doesn't do anything particularly like villainous. She's just selfish and but she's and cunning, and she's spoiled, and then she learns through the times of like the Civil War and the Reconstruction era, like how to survive. And I don't know. I really like her as an example of a very strong and a very smart female who is not great. And just written as an actual interesting human.
Well, I think we tend to think as a society that the best characters are one that does everything with honor and they're always doing things right. Okay, that's how we look at some of the a heroine or a hero.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I think she's a great character because she knows how to survive with all of this shit thrown upon her, and like you said, was forced to change in a society that couldn't evolve on its own. And she does. I think at the end of the day, I mean, if you read Gone with the Wind and then you read the sequel afterwards, she is a character that comes full circle. She is strong-willed. She's the kind of woman that, whether you agree with her morals or not, she is strong-willed enough to know how to survive and to coexist, okay, in this world and to deal with tragedy. So it's not perfect, but I don't think that makes it a bad character.
Right. Most of my characters are very not perfect that I put on this list, and that's probably why I like them.
Well, the characters that always are trying to do things right and that are honorable or whatever.
I have a few of those too, but
yeah, they don't make the. I remember when we had our Game of Thrones debate and we did our panel a couple of years ago at Alcon, and one of the debates was Jon Snow is not a great character. He is honorable. You like him because he's honorable, but he's not that interesting. He's predictable. You know what's going to happen. Jaime Lannister is a better character,
but not really big ones compared to everyone else.
Well, but my point is Jaime Lannister is a better character in that series because of how he evolves. And I like where it's kind of confirmation in the series where Bran tells him, that if he had told or he had sought revenge or whatever, it wouldn't have made him the man that he is today, that he evolved and became a hero at the end of the day and was able to, help defeat the Night King. So those characters are always better because of what they go through. Jon Snow didn't really evolve all that much. He was just kind of the same character all the way through. So anyway, that's all I have.
Jon Snow is the bellwether, basically. Here's your basically moral yardstick to measure all the other characters against, and you get to see the big transition in Jaime because you have this measuring stick with Jon Snow, but he's just basically there as a measuring stick.
You need that,
right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and you need it, but it doesn't necessarily make him interesting.
No, and doesn't always make them the best characters. And that the Game of Thrones series, it's great for them quickly pointing out that being honorable and all that, you may die an honorable death and go with a clear conscience, but Ned Stark died way too early because he tried to do things the right way. And if he had done things a little bit different way, maybe he would have kept his head.
It's like when Odo asked Garrick, would you have shot Gul Dukat in the back? Well, isn't that the best time?
Exactly. So anyway, Great, interesting character. Brendan, who is your number 8?
My number 8 is Guy Montag from Fahrenheit 451.
Oh wow.
Nice. Okay.
So another one of my required school book readings that I really
Learned
enjoy.
that in
One of the I'm basically hitting all the for my classic characters. I went back and went because I had to read some very classic novels for school because I had Catholic education my entire life. So I'm going back and like what were my favorite books from especially summer reading and stuff like that you had to do, and because some of them I just hated, like Marcus knows my just loathing of The Great Gatsby knows no bounds. That book is just absolute torture on children. And
For me,
I'm glad F. Scott Fitzgerald's dead. But I hated that book. Anyway, so so I went back and I was looking at the books that really impacted me as a young man that I was like, holy shit, this is actually really good, and are reasons why I still read books today because they did speak to me. And I just found his story very interesting. The idea that society can be driven to a point that we just burn all knowledge and everything is filtered through the state, and which, hey, once again, not relevant at all. And then this guy's journey from ignorance into questioning into some semblance of critical thinking. I thought that was a very interesting and just revealing journey, especially for myself. And just, okay, you're in school and this is what you're taught, and then you go out into the world and you learn new things. And I just thought it was once again a very flawed character, but a very interesting character, and the journey, the growth, kind of like what Marcus was talking about, Jaime Lannister, just that growth where the character is one thing and then slowly evolves into another thing. Hey George Lucas, you might have paid attention to that because the prequels might have been better, but and given that criticism, you still made 3 better movies than Disney did. So there you go. But anyway, yes, I like the prequels better than the sequels. I can admit that. But so maybe not episode
debate,
maybe not episode 1, but that's another debate for another day.
I'm sorry, but The Force Awakens is actually better than episode 1, even if it is just regurgitating episode 4, A New Hope.
Like I said, a debate for another day. But yeah, so I really like Guy Montag's journey, and so that's why I put him on the list.
Okay, interesting. I think it's a great character. It's actually a book should be required reading. Because
it probably isn't now, because everything that was required reading when I was a kid is labeled either racist or something nowadays. So
because a book that encourages the burning of books, and people don't need knowledge. Well, if you don't have that, that's how the fascists are easily able to control you and make you do your bidding. I'm sorry, but some of the politicians that people blindly follow on both sides, I kind of think you're not that smart if you can't be objective about it, and maybe you need a better education. But anyway,
and maybe you need to read Fahrenheit 451
and many other dystopian books.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for my number 8, I put Nancy Drew. The reason I like Nancy Drew is, to me, I don't know if putting her as equal as Sherlock Holmes is really the right way, because I think it's two different eras, 2 different genres. Well, not genres per se, but I like Nancy Drew because she's the girl that's too smart for her own good, and she's brilliant. Okay, she is the one that is always gets underestimated. She's kind of sarcastic and snarky in her own way, and she, to me, she's the girl that every woman should want to be in a world where, in a misogynistic world where a lot of people still kind of consider women second-class citizens or can't do this and that, that kind of thing. So I very much like her as that character, and it doesn't matter whether you're portraying her as like a teenager or a child or however you're reimagining it. It's still kind of the same personality. Now, that isn't to say I don't necessarily agree with the CW's interpretation of her, where she's basically like a young Fox Mulder investigating some kind of occult-like paranormal thing that's going on in her hometown. That's not really Nancy Drew. But the character. Do what?
CW made a Nancy Drew show?
Yeah, I think it got canceled. I don't know if it
got canceled. Too much anything they do, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, Allison was complaining about it. She watched like 2 episodes, and I watched the same, and I'm like, this is just the X-Files with a female Fox Mulder.
Isn't that also isn't that what they did to Archie too?
Well, and Archie was a whole nother weird, like the first few seasons were kind of interesting, but then it's like.
Then it just fucking jumped the shark like it was jumping off of a trampoline.
Well, it also suffered from the fact that if you've got one season dedicated to where there's this mystery cult game that's loosely based off Dungeons and Dragons going on, covering up a drug trade. Sorry, spoiler.
That's where I was. That's where I went exit stage left.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, you've got too many episodes going on here, too much crap going. This is a show that should have been for Netflix at 10 or 13 episodes, and you're done.
Mm-hmm.
Tighten up the writing. Quit trying to stretch out the plot line. It's easy to binge watch over a weekend. I did the first 3 seasons. I've not gone back to it. I'm not going back to it. I just don't care. So, but anyway. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of reasons that I really like Nancy Drew, and I have to throw her in. I mean, it's not really a spoiler, but of course Sherlock Holmes is in my list.
I figured one of you guys would put him too.
Right. But I think for kind of a female detective sleuth, solves crimes or whatever, a girl that's kind of getting into trouble but is able to solve everything, I think those are great characters. And again, and nothing against the fathers who have teenage daughters who complain that their children are too smart for their own good. At times, you should want a woman to be that, okay? And we should have a better society. We should be able to live in a society where misogynistic pricks don't rule the day, where they're jealous of what women can do or being smarter or anything like that. So, and Nancy Drew, to me, is a great female heroine. And we've seen a lot of characters emulate that in TV series and stuff. Going back to Person of Interest, Shaw and Root are very much Nancy Drew-esque in their own way within that dynamic. Well, even Carter is another one, is a great example. That they are just as equal as men, if not better. So that's why I have her at number 8. So anyway. Okay. Yes, that was number 8. Moving right along to number 7. We'll try to speed this up a little bit. Chloe, number 7.
All right. Went on to somebody I don't think is that flawed, but I like him because I consider him one of my ultimate archetypes for a guy I would want, which is Wesley from Princess Bride.
Nice.
So, like, I was tempted to actually put it in Montoya because he's a lot more of a nuanced character. And that's great. And I love nuanced characters. Like, he had a great revenge plot. It was, he has famous lines. But ultimately, Wesley, I don't know. Everything about Wesley, I kind of like grew up being like, yes, this is exactly what I want from a guy. And then eventually Han Solo too, which he's not exactly not as much like Wesley, but yeah, sort of. Kind of like pirates.
Right. And if you're wondering why we haven't talked about The Princess Bride in any of this series, because it started as a book.
Yeah. And I made sure to look that up. Like, okay, I both read the book and seen the movie. Which one came first? I bet. Okay, the book came first. Good.
Great character.
Yeah.
And
So,
let's be honest. So Wesley's just Han Solo with a little bit more spit and polish because, yeah, I mean, you say they're not all like. I mean, we're talking about the same guy who, when his girlfriend's about to stab herself, says, "There's a shortage of perfect breasts in this world. It would be a shame to ruin yours."
exactly. I mean, yes, they're
I
both
agree with that
very
statement.
like quick-witted and just have these amazing lines.
Like I said, he's Han Solo with more spit and polish.
Yeah, I think Wesley's just a
he's
little
less
bit more
scruffy.
moral. I don't know. I mean, Wesley will still like maybe stab you in the back, but only if you super duper deserve it.
Nice. Brendan, who's number 7 on your list?
So I'm gonna leave the classics for a moment and move forward to a modern character who I got a lot of enjoyment from while I was in the military and was off in the middle of nowhere and had a lot of time to read. And that's R.A. Salvatore's famous character, Dris Duorden, the dark elf turned good guy. And the many books that he wrote about Dris Duorden and his adventures with his friends. And once you should. And as a matter of fact, you can buy them in like companion books now too, where you can get like 3 or 4 novels in one. So you can get like the first 12 books and only have to buy 3 books. And it's very much a story of, once again, you're going to see this from me a lot on a lot of these characters, but a story of growth. He starts off in this evil matriarchal society where men are basically the slave labor and or the cannon fodder, if you will. And he escapes that, tries to figure out who he is, wanders aimlessly, ends up on the surface, has to adjust his eyesight to the surface, which takes years, ends up finding unlikely companions and growing and becomes a good person and a champion of the people. And so it's a really and it's filled with a whole bunch of fantasy stuff like dragons and Pegasus and stuff like that. But and it's set in the D&D world. It's set in the Forgotten Realms setting of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, it's actually literally set in a D&D world.
Yes, it is. It's the Forgotten Realms is one of the major D&D settings. So Forgotten Realms, Ravenloft, Dark Sun, Greyhawk. These are the major D&D settings, and Forgotten Realms is one of them. Dragonlance, Spelljammer, a few more, but Forgotten Realms is probably the biggest, most well-known one. Certainly has the most written lore, character books written. So I mean, I could have gone with Elminster, but I mean, Elminster's just a badass wizard. I mean, so I wanted to get a D&D character on here, and I went with Drizzt.
Nice. Well, and here's the thing, folks. We talk about our top 10 list in books. This absolutely counts, okay? Because great books are written from the D&D universe.
And he's an original character written in the books. He's not from, just.
No, it's an actual book series. It wasn't like it came from a TV show or a movie or. Yeah, it's an actual book series. As a matter of fact, the author, R.A. Salvatore, Bob Salvatore, he's also written a ton of books. He's written a ton of books outside of D&D. He's done some Star Wars books. As a matter of fact, the aforementioned New Jedi Order, the very first book where they kill Chewbacca, that was Bob Salvatore. And he didn't know he was killing Chewbacca until after he signed the contract. They're like, congratulations, you're writing the first book in the series. Now you have to kill Chewbacca. And he went, excuse me? And then they let him, by the way, they hung him out to dry for 4 to 5 years while they were coming out with this 22 book series. The fans all thought it was Bob Salvatore's decision to kill Chewbacca. He got hate mail for 5 years.
Yeah, I figured, yeah.
It wasn't until the end of the series where they came out and said, no, that was actually our decision, and explained the whole process. And, by then Bob Salvatore's like, yeah, you guys, thanks very much. So, yeah. But that's all I got to say about Bob Salvatore and Drizzt Do'Urden. So let's move it along because I know we got a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my number 7, I'm putting 2 characters from Ayn Rand books together because they're essentially the same character, even if it may be for a little bit different reasons. The first one is Henry Roark from The Fountainhead, which is one of my all-time favorite books, and then John Galt. First of all, both of these characters are the same in the sense that they are very much, they adhere to their individuality and will not be stifled by anybody else when it comes to creativity. They would rather live outside of normal society to ensure their creative endeavors and to be able to make the things that they want to make. Whether you're dealing with idiot bosses that don't understand your art, or government and corporate cronyism that tries to stifle your innovation. These are two very different books that Ayn Rand wrote. I'm not going to get into the politics of Atlas Shrugged because most people misinterpret what that book is. Henry Roark probably is my favorite as an artist because he would rather destroy his own work that he does for someone else if they are allowed to change it, and it ruins the artistic integrity or aesthetic quality of what he is creating. And he's a very troubled character because it's his own moral code is, do I do stuff for other people, get paid whatever they can do what they want, versus my art is more important despite money because I need to be allowed to create. And it's that give and take between entities that want you to do something and create something for them versus you creating something for yourself and hoping that people like, which is more important. And I think every artist struggles with that. John Galt, it's the same way with innovation. And I think it's great to have, there's a great tagline about, you know, he's the man who stopped the motor of the world. He stood up to it. And it's not about which political philosophy is better or anything like that, communism versus, you know, capitalism or anything. Again, people misinterpret that. It's really about having a place where you can have the freedom to innovate, create. And if you're not going to allow me to do that, I'm going to take away the people that want to be able to do this away from you. We can work with you, but you have to allow us to do what we do more than anything else. And that's that give and take between what you're creating for other people versus yourself, and the freedom to be able to do it, compared to bureaucracy and corporate cronyism and all that. So I identify with both characters, and I think they're both great in their own ways because, again, as an artist, I'd rather give up money or a lot of money for someone that's going to ruin something that I'm trying to create versus me being able to have the ability to create and share my vision of a story. And while you can have collaborative processes when it comes to things that you're creating, at the end of the day, is it not more important to be able to show your vision of it and your as the creator versus what everybody else thinks it should be? So, like I said, I put these two characters together because, again, they're virtually the same. And I think they're great characters for books. So, and I encourage people, if you're an artist, you need to read The Fountainhead, whether you agree or disagree with Ayn Rand.
I know her politics. Some of those are make a point.
Yeah, and you don't have to agree with her politics or whatever, you know, coming as a Russian author, hating absolutely anything that
I totally get where she's coming from. I get why she's the way she is. Right. She's a little extreme, so.
Right, and maybe, but again, we talk about the characters that she writes, and that's really the morality that they deal with, is having the freedom to create versus people that are trying to stifle them. And for me, Henry Roark is, again, the ultimate. He'd rather destroy it all than have someone else reshape his vision. So I get that. Anyway, that's my number 7. Number 6, Chloe.
Oh, it is me again. All right. This is kind of like someone who's an ultimate kind of like nerd girl fantasy, and from a very classic novel, Jane Eyre.
I was wondering if there was going to be any Jane Austen in this.
It's actually a Bronte book.
Oh, you know what? I feel terrible about that. You're right. You are absolutely right. I'm like.
But yeah, I have Austen later on.
Okay.
So don't worry. But yeah, kind of the same ish, time era. But Jane Eyre, she's a very plain looking woman. She's very intelligent and she has fairly high morality. And she doesn't compromise any of the things about herself and ultimately gets the, you know, the dark, rich man at the end, or like without compromising anything about herself, which I feel like in a lot of like modern films, like a lot of like nerd girls compromise things about themselves and before the end to kind of like get the guy, and which always kind of irks me a little bit. I don't know why. I know it's terrible, but I really like Jane Eyre because she is who she is. Nerd girl fantasy ending pretty much.
I think she's a great heroine.
And
Uh,
yeah.
Yeah. Hello there, fellow nerds. I'm Marcus Blake, the editor and producer of That Nerd Show, and we need your help. That's right, we need your support. Like any news outlet, we rely on advertising and donations to keep the lights on. To be the greatest show in this universe, we need funding, and that's where you come in. Like most artists out there, we actually have a Patreon account, and we're asking for donations. But we're not just asking for you to give us money. We actually have stuff that we're going to be giving away if you donate. So we'll be uploading more and more videos to our Patreon account from YouTube, from our daily news to interviews with celebrities to gaming videos and all of our other individual shows that we are doing here in 2020. But to keep us going, we need a little bit of funding. And again, that's where you come in. So it can be as little as $1. $1 makes all the difference in the world. And you can do anywhere from $1 to $3 to $5, all the way up to $500. And we're going to be giving stuff away for your donations. So you can get some Nerd Power wristbands or any other wristbands from our series of wristbands that we're creating for nerds. You can get cool retro gaming t-shirts from our Nerd Swag shop if you make a donation of $20 or more. You can even get advertising on our website or within our videos if you make a purchase or donate $50 or more dollars. We have different tiers, like most artists. Want that new video game that's coming out this year? You want to be playing the same video game we are as we're reviewing it? Hey, you can do that with a $100 donation. Are you looking to get a new console before the year is out? Hey, $500 and you can get an Xbox One, a PlayStation 4, or even a Nintendo Switch. It just takes a little bit to help us. As little as $1 per video that we do. And we're going to have a variety of videos that you can help support. So if you like our content, if you like everything that we do as nerds, from honest conversations about pop culture to great celebrity interviews to wacky and fun gaming videos, then help support us on our Patreon account. You can check us out at patreon.com/thatnerdshow. You can check us out at patreon.com/that. Take 3. Go to patreon.com/thatnerdshow and make your donation today. Even if it's just $1. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you and stay nerdy. Oh, cool. Brendan, how about you? Who's number 6 on your list?
Okay, back to the classics. So this one for me is the ultimate revenge tale, and also one of my favorite movie adaptations of all time. But
Jim Caviezel's the man.
Edmond Dantes from The Count of Monte Cristo, the titular Count of Monte Cristo.
Which movie adaptation do you like?
I love the one with Jim Caviezel and Guy Pierce. It came out in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
it's
I
absolutely.
I saw it.
Yeah.
I really liked that, but I don't know
Yeah.
how close it is to the book.
It takes liberties because it's a 2-hour movie, but I mean, every 2-hour movie is going to take liberties with a 600-page book. So, or more, I forget how long it is, but
it's a great version. I mean, you should obviously read the book, but it's a great version for a movie, and very much captures the essence of the book. And
so, I almost went with the priest, but I almost went with priest because he's a great character too. But I mean, it's the Count of Monte Cristo. You have to go with the Count of Monte Cristo. So
right, and that's what I was saying. The actor who played the priest,
Richard Harris.
Richard Harris, just
God rest his soul. Otherwise known as Dumbledore.
I think my favorite scenes of the entire movie are them together in the prison,
discussing economics while they're digging the tunnel out of the prison.
Right.
It's been so long.
It's like translation: dig now, freedom later.
God, anytime that movie's on cable, I got to stop and watch it. So
I only saw it once in the theaters, and I was kind of young, so it's been a long time.
Go, it's worth a rewatch. It really is.
I really loved it though.
Jim Caviezel and Guy Pierce too. Guy Pierce might be actually the two of them might be two of the most underrated actors of the last 20 years. They're both phenomenal actors. Whatever they do it exceptionally well. And I still say Jim Caviezel should have been Batman, but you know. But yeah, so it's and then of course the rest of the cast is excellent as well. And you know, I love period pieces anyway. I love the dress. I love the architecture. So yeah, definitely worth watching. But anyway, let's move it along.
All right. My number 6, Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. I think he's the heart and soul of the series. You know, he's like the guy that controls the strings with everything, and I love his transformation from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. I also incorporate him as the character of everything with the Hobbit and how he brings everything kind of full circle. He's just everybody. There's a lot of great characters from Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, but I think Gandalf really is the best that encompasses everything within that story. So that's why he's on my list. And I
almost put somebody from The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings on the list. I just couldn't bring myself to do it, not because none of them are worthy, but just because I just think they're so all intertwined with each other, and it's so much of an ensemble that I just couldn't choose one over the rest of them.
Don't worry, my number 1 is 1, so
well, that's fine. It's just I love them all so much I couldn't pick one, and I didn't want to just say the whole cast.
It hurt me to pick any of the others, believe me.
Yeah, and it's completely understandable. Completely get where you're coming from on that. So, all right. Number 5 on our list. Who is number 5, Chloe?
Severus Snape. I know this is probably something a lot of fangirls would probably have on their list. I'm not even a giant Harry Potter fangirl, funny enough. I am a reasonably moderate Harry Potter fangirl, and I know it's not a good time also to be a very Harry Potter fan due to the author going off a little more, but that doesn't change the books any.
Doesn't mean you can't enjoy the stories.
Exactly. Yeah, the books have not changed any. Severus Snape is a deeply flawed character. I'm trying to take away the performance, in the films, of course, from this, because that shouldn't be an influence. And I did read the books for the most part before I saw most of the films, and eventually later on I back to back. But some people I know are you can't like Severus Snape. He's one of those nice guy people who I should have been. I was kind of nice to the girl, so I should have gotten her, and now I'm snubbed. That's not exactly his character. It's
first of all, Snape is the ultimate hero of Harry Potter.
Exactly.
Okay, he is more heroic than any of the other guys. And Harry, we know he's predictable. We know what's going to happen.
Hey,
all of
Snape, duh.
Snape makes the ultimate sacrifice to protect the boy that's not his, or the girl that he always loved.
Yeah,
okay.
His motivation was just pure love, even if she did snub him. And
by the way,
it's so tragic. His story is just so tragic.
to make a classic book reference, he is the Jackal. He is the Sidney Carlton from Tale of Two Cities, but for Harry Potter.
Ooh, I
So there
never.
you go.
Although I will have to say this, there is no debate who's the better villain between the Emperor and Voldemort. The Emperor took over the galaxy. Voldemort couldn't even take over a high school.
Oh, I'm not gonna argue and say Voldemort's better than the Emperor. I mean, he's more entertaining in some. Well, depends on who.
Yeah, but no, I had to bring that up because I just think that's a great line. Because somebody was trying to argue that it's like, dude, Voldemort couldn't take over a high school. Palpatine took over the galaxy.
Nice. Cool. All right, who's number 5 on your list, Brendan?
So this is my lone Star Wars character because there are very few famous Star Wars characters that started off in books. But this one has gone from books now into the cartoons. Hopefully with Disney Plus, we'll get to see him either in like an Obi-Wan series or whatever. But Mithra Naruto, a.k.a. Grand Admiral Thrawn.
Yes.
So this guy pasted everybody, and it was only dumb luck that he was ever defeated. And Thrawn is one of the best villains in Star Wars. He's one of my favorite villains of all time. And honestly, you could even make the case he's not even really a villain. He's on the opposing side, but he's not necessarily evil. All these guys think they're doing the right thing anyway. Good and evil, I guess, is always depending on your point of view. I mean, the Russians certainly thought we were the bad guys during the Cold War. So, but it's just he's such an awesome character, and he's the ultimate chess master. You're thinking 2 steps ahead, he's thinking 42 steps ahead. He's playing chess. He's people call Bill Belichick the Emperor. No, Bill Belichick is the Grand Admiral Thrawn of the NFL.
Well, I will say this for everybody that complains about the Disney sequels and everything, and yes, you can complain about them. I mean, they're fine to a point. But if there was ever a sequel that should have ever been episode 7, 8, 9, it was Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire.
Heir to the Empire.
Yep. Oh my God, so incredible. So I got with you on that. I almost did it, but I got too many classic characters that I wanted to throw into my top 10 list. So, all right. My number 5, just because I actually enjoyed this series. While the movies may not be as good, at least the Swedish movies have been better. Anyway, Lisbeth Salander from the the Hornets, the Dragon Tattoo series. But anyway, the ultimate hacker, a tragic figure, but is always doing the right thing. And I actually like Brittany Merrill's portrayal of her as, again, another girl that's too smart for her own good, but is just being shit upon. And the way she gets back at the rapist dude in the Dragon Tattoo book and the movie was brilliant. I liked Claire Foy's version of her in the last movie, but she is a great, great character. And again, computer nerd, hacker, everything about her, love it. So she's not talked about enough, so I threw her in my top 10 list. And yes, the way that she is described in the book, I freely admit I'm just at least a little bit turned on by that. So anyway, that's my number 5. Number 4. What is number 4, Chloe?
Oh, wait, where did my list go? Okay. So Elizabeth Bennet from, of course, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice.
I still think she's
I told you I was gonna. It's okay. I will include an Austen character. I hope she's not too similar to Jane Eyre in this, but she's not quite like Jane Eyre. She's actually, she's pretty. Of course, that doesn't really matter though. She's kind of like the quick-witted, like sassy archetype, like that I've always just really loved in girls that I read about and looked up to. There's a few Shakespeare women that are like that too, but I didn't know if plays could be included, so I ultimately picked Elizabeth.
She is sassy and quick-witted. I will give you that. I always thought she was more of the antagonist in that book than Darcy was, and kind of misunderstood him. But at the same time, her
I
quick
mean, she was definitely prone to misunderstandings and her own fault.
right. But I get where you're coming from. She is her own woman and breaks free from normal tradition and is the better of the sisters. So also, and if you like the other version of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, she kicked butt with a sword. I'm just
Yeah. I'm so afraid to watch that because.
Oh no, it's a fun, terrible movie. It really is. All right, number 4 for you, Brendan.
I'm going back to Agatha Christie with everybody's favorite Belgian who doesn't brew beer, Hercule Poirot. So, he is Belgian, mon ami, not French. So,
I know.
yeah, and I Murder. Actually, the very first Agatha Christie book I read was Murder on the Orient Express, followed almost immediately by Death on the Nile. I have not read all, I think, 67 books and short stories with Hercule Poirot that Agatha Christie wrote. Although David Suchet, who played Poirot for many years on the BBC and ITV, did. I thought that was amazing that he actually read every single bit of Poirot before playing the character, and he actually wrote out 96 different quirks from the books that Christie gave to Poirot. So he had this entire list of quirks of how Poirot acted, dressed, ate, talk, everything. It was the most incredible delve into a character by an actor I've ever seen. So I love the character. I love the many different variations that have been shown up on film. I'm really glad Kenneth Branagh's bringing this to a new audience with Murder on the Orient Express a few years ago, and then Death on the Nile comes out in November, I believe, if it hasn't been pushed back. What'd you say?
They just dropped the trailer to that movie this week.
Oh, cool. I have to go. I haven't even seen it yet. Yeah. So I'll have to go check that out after we finish up here. But yeah, so Poirot, just one of my favorite literary characters of all time. I love his enthusiasm, how it was this. I mean, he was not a strong man. He was not a big man. He wasn't your typical hero. It was his brain, the little gray cells that
right.
were the hero of the day.
I absolutely agree, and he almost made it into my top 10. But again, it's just I've got these characters that were like, oh, they'd be obviously in the.
I mean, all of us could easily have a top 50 list, but that would take like 5 weeks to fucking film. So,
great character. Well, my number 4, one of our favorite characters, I put him in number 4, was Jack Ryan. The character that we couldn't talk about before because he originally started in a book. Here's my main reasons why he's a top 10 character. It's what we've always talked about. He's the reluctant hero. He's just an analyst. He's not a spy. Quit trying to create him as a fucking spy.
Amazon.
Yeah. I tell you what, they did so great with season 1, and season 2 is like.
I tell you what's happened in season 2. Season 2, they were going to go to Russia. They were going to do the Cardinal of Kremlin. Then all the shit happened with Russian collusion, and they got scared, and they tripped over themselves trying to update Clear and Present Danger, and it just blew up in their faces.
Whereas Homeland actually did a perfect of the last couple of seasons dealing with Russia and how they
and Amazon. I was so disappointed. Amazon should have nutted up and dove right into that story because it would have been perfect for the time. But they got scared, and I don't know what it is. They need to put their big girl panties on and go back to friggin' Russia.
Man, and if you stick to the source material too, it's not. Tom Clancy doesn't have a blatant hatred for Russia.
No.
He has the ultimate respect for their commanders in the cat and mouse game. Even though he's obviously very conservative, believes in capitalism, hates communism, but you see.
You just happen to have a Cold War with them for a long time.
Yeah, well, it's this respect for the individuals and the intellect and the quality of people in their military and in their intelligence gathering, arms, whether that be at the time the KGB or the GRU. and now the FSB. And there's nothing in that story that really couldn't be updated for a modern era. And basically Edward Snowden is Cardinal of the Kremlin in reverse. So I mean,
Right.
you could easily make that story a 20th century story and be pressing it with the time, and have you don't have to have Trump as the president. You can just have an outlandish character as the president, and it would have been perfect for the series. And I am not afraid to tell Amazon and Bezos, you screwed the pooch on that one.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we want season 3 because John Krasinski has done a really good job as Jack Ryan, but you need to get back to the source material and fucking fix it so we can forget season 2.
And I forget the actor. I pardon me. I forget the actor who played Greer. But even though they've kind of messed up his backstory, he's done a phenomenal job too. And I want to see more of both of them. I just don't want to see them shy away from a story because they think it'll be controversial.
Controversy will get you ratings. All right. The other reason I really love Jack Ryan is you have this great evolution of him as a character. Now, Brendan, he's on your list, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk about him right now and all that. Where did you put Jack Ryan on your list?
Number 2.
Okay, I bet I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction that our number 1 is actually the same. But anyway, we'll get to that in a moment.
Probably not.
You might be surprised at who I picked.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll go ahead and just quickly talk about Jack Ryan. My biggest thing about him, more than just being the reluctant hero, is how he evolves. Okay, through his career with the CIA, being an analyst to the point where, yeah, sure, I will be the vice president, whatever, and do my duty and all that, and then shit happens. You're like, holy fucking shit, I'm the president now.
And then how ruthless he gets when he needs to be.
Right.
Like when the guy who set up the biological attack, when they figured out who that is. I don't know if you've read Executive Orders, Chloe.
I haven't read any of those.
Okay. So in Executive Orders, he's trying to literally rebuild the entire government. Okay. A joint session of Congress has been hit by a guy with a plane. And this was written, by the way, 5 years before 9/11. The book came out in 1996. That was Debt of Honor. So in Debt of Honor, he's supposed to be sworn in as the vice president. He's driving. The plane hits the joint session of the Capitol. All of a sudden, now he's the president. The book ends with him staring out the window of the CNN building in Washington, D.C., staring at the flames of the Capitol. And Executive Order starts with Jack turns around from the window. Okay. So he's now trying to rebuild the entire government as the president. And at the same time, this sheikh from Iran unleashes a plague in the United States, a biological engineered plague. They stop it, they contain it, and they find out he did it. They have John Clark and Domingo Chavez, the Rainbow Six guys who have given birth to books and video games, painting this house for a laser-guided bomb. And they're giving a press conference while the bomb is being dropped. The guy they are bombing is watching the press conference and realizes that bomb's heading for his house too late. And he blows him up on international television with the guy watching himself get blown up and says, "Don't think we're weak because we're injured. Leave us alone and let us rebuild."
Right.
Okay.
So he goes from mild-mannered Family Guy to that.
Right. But that's the brilliance of the character. It's tough when you need to be. I very much think that he was kind of the embodiment of Harry Truman, where he's the accidental president, and the guy that isn't supposed to do anything gets along with everybody, but he's tough when he has to. I mean,
kind of Truman mixed with Teddy Roosevelt, because he does speak softly and carry a big stick.
Well, but my point is, take that scenario and imagine having to walk in with Harry Truman. You just become president. You just find out about the Manhattan Project. And then months later, you're the one that has to make the decision. Do we drop this bomb on Japan to end the war and save American lives, knowing what casualties it's going to bring and how it changes war forever?
And how history is going to judge you.
Right, exactly. And I think that's what makes Jack Ryan a great character. It's like I don't want to have to do this, but don't think I won't do it. Or, because I rewatched this the other day, Quigley Down Under. Just because I said I don't prefer it doesn't mean I don't know how to use
Yeah.
It's a good quality for characters.
it. Right.
Well, I do
So,
understand that now you guys would pick him.
I think Jack Ryan is that we hope that we can find characters with that sense of morality, tough when they need to be, the family man that also can be reserved and objectively look at everything and doesn't throw too much emotion or his own ego into it. He is the Boy Scout. He accepts that he's the Boy Scout. But he will kill you if he has to, for right or wrong. So that's why he's number 4. He could be higher, but that's my take on it. So, and I knew you would have him in your list. All right. Who did you have at number 4, Brendan?
We already got to me. I had Poirot.
Oh, sorry. That's right. Sorry. Number 3. We'll jump to number 3.
All right. And then mine was on his lower list, Jean Valjean from Les Miserables. Because I love a good redemption story, and his is like one of the ultimate ones. And also a really good pay it forward kind of story too, where like, hey, if you're maybe try to do good for like these people, then they might go on to do like good things.
And hey,
I wore my late best shirt today, yay!
and hey, a clergy member who actually helped someone instead of doing something stupid or horrible.
So we won't talk too much about that since we already covered him. But
all right, Brendan, who's your number 3?
Number 3, I went with Sherlock Holmes.
Okay, that's
So,
actually my number. That's actually my number 2.
Yeah.
you guys could just cover that at the same time.
Okay, so we'll talk about Chloe. You had him on your list as well, right?
Oh, I didn't have Sherlock on my list. I said I was thinking about it, and then like I figured you guys would probably do it anyways.
I don't think.
Well, let's get your number 3, Marcus, and then we can do Sherlock on number 2.
Well, my number 3 is James Bond, the ultimate spy. Love the Ian Fleming books.
I was him, but I haven't read a James Bond book, and that like my criteria is I've had to at least read at least one.
Don't get me wrong, I love the movies, even some of the terrible ones. But I like the fact that James Bond, as much of a lover as he is also brutal when he has to be. And I love the guys from Timothy Dalton to Daniel Craig who have portrayed him as he should be from the books. And I think we make all the jokes about him being a ladies' man and doing those things and gambling and whatnot, but he is kind of a cold-blooded killer in a lot of ways. And I think Daniel Craig is probably the one that we've really seen emulate who James Bond is.
The very beginning of Casino Royale, the second kill. The second kill is easier. Yes, thank you. Or yes, it is.
James Bond is not a purely nice guy. Like he's the hero.
So like I said, when it comes to all the spy novels out there and everything, James Bond, I mean, that's number 1 on my list. I love Ian Fleming's writing. So there you go. All right, Chloe, we'll get to Sherlock here in a moment, but Chloe, who was your number 2?
This is a hard one for me because like I love quite a few characters from this, but in the Song of Ice and Fire series, I'm gonna ultimately say Tyrion Lannister.
He is one of the best characters ever.
How do you want to die, half man? In my bed at the age of 80.
More of a personal favorite for me is Arya Stark, but I think I've put way too many strong, sassy girls already. Like, those are represented. I love Arya. My heart is more Arya, but I think as like written wise, Tyrion's probably the best.
Well, nice. Tyrion's got some great dialogue, though.
Oh yeah, he has the best lines. You know, he's very good at coming up with strategies.
He's like the pro of that.
The last season is last couple seasons are like accurate to like what will come out in the books. We'll see.
Well, and I was just gonna say he's also the voice of the audience. Because when people are acting stupidly in it and you're yelling at them while reading the book, he's the one slapping slapping Joffrey over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just, it's easy to identify with a character like that when you're sitting there going, what are these idiots doing? And he's sitting there going, what are these idiots doing? And while drinking a wine, and you're like, that's a good idea. I could use a glass. I mean,
oh, sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
Well,
No,
to me,
not like that, but like he does have breakdowns where like wow, I failed.
my favorite scene with him really is when he finally meets Daenerys Targaryen, and he basically tells her off, and he's like, or she doesn't want to hear. He knows he could die and all that, but he tells her the truth and lays it on the line that you can't do it your way. You have to learn to work with people, and you need someone to be able to hold you back. And he kind of fails at that, but keeps trying. But throughout at least with the series. But again, he is the honest voice that everybody needs in Westeros.
Mm-hmm.
So, great character. All right, Sherlock Holmes. To me, he's the best detective. I also put John Watson kind of with him personally because it's a yin and a yang thing. They need each other. Sherlock is so smarter than everybody. He kind of needs a friend to bring him back to reality, and that's what John Watson provides. So, there's different versions. I mean, that's also why I love the medical show House, because he's Sherlock and Wilson is pretty much John Watson, and he needs that friendship. But if you are literally looking at the detective and how to deduce, how to point out things that may not be socially adequate to a point, doesn't matter. He's just the greatest detective, and I love the fact that you can still read those novels today, and they are considered an instruction manual on how to be a detective. So that's my take on Sherlock. Brendan?
Well, yeah, I think it very much is too, because I mean, it's if maybe not from a modern crime fighting, or crime solving point of view, if from just the philosophy of how to be a detective and to let the facts form your theories, not form a theory and then try to fit your facts to make the theory correct.
Right.
And just the way Doyle wrote Holmes and how he looked at the world differently, how things, what we consider to be common knowledge just didn't matter to Holmes because they weren't important to his singular purpose in life.
Right.
And so he ignored everything, and sometimes even eating, because it got in the way of his singular purpose in life, and that was to solve these unsolvable crimes.
Right. I think there's been a lot of great versions of him, from older classic movies and all that. The one that we consider more popular is the Benedict Cumberbatch series, and you wish that they would do more, but they basically, instead of making a series, would give you 3 like Sherlock Holmes movies.
Yeah, they're basically movies. It's fine.
Yeah. But I think probably my favorite reference to pop culture when it comes to Sherlock Holmes is I love the show Longmire, which started on A&E and then it finished up on Netflix.
Sure.
When Longmire is trying to teach Branch, the deputy who's running for sheriff against him, on how to basically be a detective, he hands him a Sherlock Holmes book and says, "There you go. If you're going to learn to be a detective, learn it right," so to speak. So It doesn't get any better than that. And the books are they're timeless. You can still go back and read them today and find them just as relevant. So, like I said, greatest detective. All right. We've reached it. We've kind of figured out we've got a lot of the same characters at different places in our list. So we're going to talk about our number 1 favorite all-time book character. And we're going to see if Brendan and I actually have the same character. Chloe, well, we're going to start with you. Who is your number 1 character in a book?
I warned you it's going to be from Lord of the Rings. It's Samwise.
If you have to pick one other than Gandalf, I would go with Samwise. He is kind of the conscious.
I mean, when I was as a child, like Gandalf was, of course, my favorite and all that. And I still love him, which is why I kind of picked like the Gandalf of like the Wheel of Time, basically, kind of in Gandalf's place. Because I'm like, oh, I can't put Gandalf and Samwise, but
And I think the best line I've ever heard about Samwise was from a friend of mine who had never read the books, but at the end of the Lord of the Rings, when Samwise is picking up his children, a friend of mine goes, "That's really impressive that he can still pick up his kids. He's been carrying Frodo for 3 movies."
yeah, right? So, like Sam, I mean, the whole point of like both The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings is like the most humble person ends up being like the hero, right? Like,
Right.
and Sam, like, he's not even of like important Hobbit, family line.
He's a
And
gardener.
yeah, he's a gardener. And he's not a Took or a Baggins or anything like that. And he wasn't supposed to be the hero that carried the ring. Frodo is, and and unfortunately, poor Frodo has to take the brunt of like the unpleasantness of the ring. Poor Frodo.
Right.
So it messes
Well,
up a lot.
And I think Sean Astin did such a great job playing him and embodying that character. But then again, when you were Rudy, you go off to play Sam. Sorry, I have to always make a reference to Rudy.
Yeah, and Sam is just the most incredibly humble. Like he also has like just really good head on his shoulders. The most common sense out of almost anybody. Besides maybe Gandalf, I guess.
Right.
In the series,
he's a great character. I can see why you would put him at number 1. All right, let's figure this out. Let's see if we have the same. Brendan, who is your number 1 character?
Okay, before I announce this, I want our audience to remember these are our favorite characters, not necessarily the greatest of all time. So my favorite character that originated a book is Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden. So I just finished reading book number 16, I think, is the one that just came out. 17 comes out, which was called Peace Talks. 17 Battlegrounds comes out in September next month. So I'm very, very excited for that. And what I love about Dresden, or the author, Jim Butcher, is that unlike some other authors who have written long fantasy series that will go unnamed, George R. Martin, when there was a big lull in books between 2014 and 2016, Butcher was constantly on his website communicating with his fans, letting them know what was going on and saying, no, I have not forgotten about this. Yes, I've had some other projects. I've had some craziness in my life. Dresden's still coming. And then, he delivered not 1, but 2 books in the same year.
Right.
And also,
Go ahead.
But the character is fantastic. It's going to end up being a 25-book series when it's all said and done, because he's already released his plan for that. And it's just really a phenomenal series. The characters are fantastic. You have everything from the winter and summer courts of the Sidhe. You've got different vampire courts. You've got undead. You've got werewolves. I mean, literally anything that's ever been in fantasy is in this. And here he is, this wizard muddling through, towing the line between the supernatural world and the mundane world while helping the Chicago police solve crazy crimes. And him waxing, being a wise ass to these 1,000-year-old beings that don't understand the pop culture references he's using to make fun of them with. It's fantastic. It's so entertaining, and I love the series.
Well, I was trying to do something here. I may have actually messed it up, so I apologize for the broadcast. So let me switch it back over.
I'm about to lose power soon too. So if you lose me, I'm like, I'm really sorry.
I know, if you got to plug something in, which I'm going to plug in a camera on mine real quick. But anyway, sorry, everybody. Trying to get everything. Well, I guess we can't get everything.
Some of us do prep work before the show, just saying.
Well,
Sorry, Marcus. I just had to take the shot.
Laptop on my charger, and I just didn't this time.
Well, I usually did. I had just enough power. Anyway, well, I guess I can't do what I wanted to do. All right.
Just tell us your number one, I guess.
Good Lord, have mercy. Technology. It's always right here at the end. Harry Dresden was my number one.
So, hey, you guys had the same, right?
Well, I will tell you why, too. I agree with everything that you said about Harry Dresden. I also love the fact that Jim Butcher has always, reached out to his fans. We've always, gotten books. And
Not insulted them.
For a second, anyway.
Right.
Cool.
I am sad that we only got like a short-lived series on the Sci-Fi Channel, which is still very good. You can.
Although he now has the film rights again, so hopefully somebody will option it.
Right.
So
here's the thing that I really like about Harry Dresden. It's kind of the same reason I like Jack Ryan. I think in a lot of ways he's a reluctant hero. Ruthless when he wants to be, snarky. He does things that may go against what you consider a normal hero would do. But the books are so damn good in regards to here you've got this warlock. I'm not going to take away from Harry Potter and how good that series is. It's not my favorite, and I try to tell people that Harry Potter's the greatest wizard. No, he isn't.
No,
it's a fun series.
I'm a mild Harry Potter fan, so I want to argue with you on that. I'm like, cool, I'm very entertained by this world. That's nice.
It's a fun series for people of that age group who grew up with Harry Potter. I think they're not better. But if you're looking for a wizard warlock that's better with magic, I always recommend the Dresden books.
Well, not only that, I mean, it starts. It's not a. So what Rowling did is she started a character young and grew that character, so that entire generation stayed with that series. Mm-hmm. But Dresden started as an adult, so
it worked for me.
but I'm saying Dresden started as an adult, so it's anybody who was an adult could pick up this series. It's not something where if you're 28, 29, 30, 40 years old now and you're going back to read the very first Harry Potter, it might not capture your imagination because you're reading a book about freshman year of high school or middle school, essentially. Right. So it's, this speaks. Well, okay, so middle school. So this Dresden speaks to a broader audience because it's anybody who's an adult can pick it up. When the books start, I believe Dresden is in his mid to late 20s. As of the last, I think he's 38 in the books now, as 38 or 39. So he's a little bit younger than me. So it's very easy to identify with the character because he's going through a lot in his mundane life. He's going through a lot of the same shit I'm going through, paying the bills, paying the rent, feeding your pets. I mean, he's got a huge dog named Mouse. That's a Tibetan foo dog, basically a Tibetan Mastiff, one of the largest dogs in the world. And then he's got a 30-pound cat named Mister, who believes that that the apartment is his apartment, and he just lets Harry stay there because Harry keeps it clean and feeds him. So he's got a lot of the same real world issues that you have as an adult. Oh, and by the way, every once in a while, a supernatural threat comes in and tries to take out half of Chicago. Or kill him or his friends or both. And sometimes all of these things from different threats at the same time. It's, and then, hey, how often can you see a guy using necromancy to fight necromancy while having a friend of yours who's a polka player play polka music to keep the beat on the necromancy spell going while riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton into battle against necromancers?
Oh, so that's the type of books those are, huh?
So there's all types. I mean, that's just one example. So
if you're looking for fantasy, supernatural magic, encompassing all that into stories with a great character, then yeah, you're not going to find anything better. And I like the fact too that he also kind of plays off as, this like PI type person and trying to solve stuff. And you're just, there's so many different interesting things about Dresden that you don't really see in other characters. And I think it's bringing a lot of different genres into one thing. But you're right. He's just trying to live a normal life, but all this other stuff is going on, and he just happens to be a warlock.
And it's really interesting how a lot of times, like, so the obvious is he'll use magic to solve mundane crimes. That's, everybody sees that, and he does that. That's obvious. But then what he does, the author flips it around, and when he's in the supernatural world, he'll use mundane things to confound and defeat supernatural villains.
Right.
So, like, for example, he's a wizard. They expect him to sling fireballs. Well, guy gets up close to him and he puts a Smith & Wesson 500 in his face and blows the back of his head off. Yeah. So they were like, "What? You're a wizard."
Well, I look at him as he's the MacGyver of wizards. It's like, I don't use what you think I'm going to use. I have
whatever's available. Yeah.
Right.
And then, and then of course you got Bob the Skull, which is just an amazing character. It's, so Bob the Skull is a spirit of intellect that knows more about magic than probably any entity on the planet, but he's confined to a skull. And Harry pays him off with basically romance novels and nudie magazines because he's infatuated with human sex. And he's like, "I'm not letting you out of the skull without." He has to let him out the skull with very specific instructions, because the last time he wasn't very specific about instructions, there was a 3-day orgy at a local sorority.
So, I mean, things happen. But no,
so it's a very crazy series. A lot of shit's going on, and then you've got Karen Murphy from the police, and then you've got the Knights of the Cross, who literally are knights of God who have the nails of the crucifixion worked into their swords. And it's just so. Have you read Peace Talks yet, Marcus?
No, I have not.
Okay, I won't ruin something for you because there's a great bit with Waldo.
I'll get to it when I get to it, but when you're busy trying to be a writer at the same time, it gets hard.
I get it, but there's a great bit with Waldo, because Waldo, at the end of the last book, Waldo becomes one of the Knights of the Cross, and there's a realization about what happened to the sword, and Sonya's reaction to it. You're going to laugh for hours. You have to read Peace Talks. I'm just for that freaking paragraph or page or two alone, but you're gonna love it.
That I need to actually get the entire collection. I don't have all that. I've given stuff away, and I also like it. Nothing against the author, but I like it when you find Dresden books for like $1 at Dollar Tree, and you're like, "Yes, please, I'll snatch a couple." I found Turncoat there a while back.
We've got most of it through Kindle and Audible really cheap. And I like getting it on Audible because I like I have a very long commute in the morning, so I just like putting on Dresden and listening to the audiobooks on the way to work and the way home. It really helps with me not getting road rage, because I can just laugh my ass off at Dresden and not pay attention to the schmucks who are cutting me off and doing 50 and the 70.
So you don't want to be Russell Crowe and Unhinged?
Part of me does, but I try to keep that part down so I don't go spend life in prison.
Right. Well, anyway, yeah, you and I had the same character, and I wanted to throw a very nerd-esque book in there that I don't think a series that most people don't read. Well, I mean, nerds do, but it should have a wider audience, is what I'm saying. And for anybody that tells me that Harry Potter is the greatest wizard, I'm just like, you're a moron. But here's a Dresden book. Much more entertaining.
Start with Stormfront.
Right. Yeah. All right, everybody. We're going to close this out. Thank you for spending a couple of hours with us talking about our top 10 characters in books. Obviously, there's a lot more characters that we can talk about, a lot more different books that are great that we think everybody should read. Like A Brave New World, you might want to read the book instead of going to watch the series on the Peacock streaming series that they just came out, which is a 9-episode version of to be equilibrium. Sorry, I had to make a joke there. I will talk more about that a different day. But anyway,
I like equilibrium.
if you've got a book character that we didn't talk about, again, you can leave a comment under our broadcast in the thread or tweet us out that character. We'd like to know what you think. But for the time being, we've got to close this out. I did want to say one thing. Instead of recommending a beer, I just actually wanted to point this out. If you're stuck in a state like Texas where they've still shut down bars and tap rooms and shit like that, and the governor and your governor is being a fucking moron, well, I'm going to give you a suggestion. He can't take away or stop business in his prohibition-esque insanity. Do a game night. Do something. Go get a growler. Go buy a six-pack. Don't go to the grocery store to do it. I mean, you can, but go take advantage of this. He can't.
Go direct to the breweries and the growler shops, because the grocery store, that's the grocery store, and the distributor are taking all your money there. Go to your local growler shop. Go to your local brewery. If they're closed, they're still doing beer to go. Sometimes if you're a brew pub, they're allowed to be open because they have a food and beverage license. Like a Craft and Growler, we can actually open. We had to spend $750 to get a new food and beverage license from the state because apparently they wanted to extort that out of us. So come out and see us. Go out and see your local brewery, whoever it is. Get a few growlers filled up. Grab a couple six-packs.
Well, but my point is, and I was thinking about this the other day, it's like, if you're still afraid to go out and you're still socially distancing and everything, well, fine. Have a game night. Do something where you can get together and you can go and get stuff to support local breweries and bars and everything. Don't let your idiotic government determine how you can do that or take away from these businesses. Because there's places all over the country that are shutting down for good that didn't have to because of idiot.
So in Dallas, Eastbound and Down Ice House just shut down. In Austin, Skull Mechanics Brewery shut down. And the Texas Craft Brewers Guild estimates that if something doesn't change, then up to a third of breweries will shut down by Labor Day, and 2/3 of the breweries will shut down by the end of the year.
Yeah, and maybe that's what they want. And fuck you, if that's your true plan. But
if that's what they want, then they're idiots, because they're losing literally hundreds of thousands of dollars in tax revenue every year. So,
but
whatever.
As nerds, we want to give you suggestions. Like I said, do a game night, tabletop, video game night, whatever. There's been too much where people can't get together and do that kind of stuff, and you can, do good beer. But the other thing too is, if you didn't learn anything from 100 years ago, with prohibition starting, you're not going to stop people from drinking or doing. All you're going to have are a rise of speakeasies, and if that's what it takes to make these places survive, fuck you, government. We're going to do it anyway. So, and Brendan, we are very much looking forward to trying your IPA that just it's on tap now at Craft and Growler, right?
Yep, it's called Return of the Mac. It is a New England IPA, generously dry hopped with Mosaic, Amarillo, and Citra hops, hence the name Mac. And I've got one full keg of it left on tap right now. In about a week and a half, we'll have a lot more because I have a double batch fermenting away as we speak.
Awesome. Well, anyway, again, we're going to close this out. Thank you for watching our broadcast, and we'll be back next week talking about our favorite Saturday Night Live skits of all time. Since we've never really talked about SNL, a lot of great things that they do put out compared to stuff they don't. So anyway.
Who is it? That's how we answer the door in my neighborhood, boys and girls. Little preview.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Say goodbye.
Goodbye, everybody.